My sister stopped my son at the dinner table and said, "No seat for brats. This is for the good ones." Her kids burst out laughing. That night I canceled every resort booking tied to my card. 3 days later she texted, "What time do we check in?" I replied, "You don't." When Michelle told my son there was no seat for brats and that the table was only for the good ones, something inside me finally snapped. It wasn't even the words themselves. It was the way she said it, like it was some inside joke between her and her kids. Like Liam wasn't even a person, just a punchline. Her kids burst out laughing. Noah even repeated it. They thought it was hilarious. Liam just stood there holding his plate. He didn't ask what she meant, didn't look at me, didn't cry. He just stood there. I told him to sit next to me and he did. Quietly. No one else said anything. Not my parents, not Michelle's husband, not even my mom, who normally makes a scene over the smallest thing. They just kept eating. I think that was the worst part. How normal they acted while my son was being humiliated like he didn't matter. I sat through the rest of the meal. I smiled, passed around dessert, offered coffee. I didn't want to give Michelle the satisfaction of seeing me upset. But I noticed she was watching me. She knew what she'd done. That was the whole point. Michelle has always hated that Liam is different. He's smart, sensitive, creative. He draws weird little robots and talks to plants. He doesn't like loud noises or chaos. And to Michelle that makes him a problem. Her kids are loud, aggressive, always grabbing things, always shouting. She calls it energy. When Liam doesn't join in, she calls him rude. When he brings a book to family dinners, she says he's antisocial. When he gets overwhelmed and needs quiet, she says he's spoiled. And I used to take it. For years I let it slide. I'd pull Liam aside and explain her comments away. He's just tired. She's just joking. She doesn't mean it. I knew it wasn't true, but I thought I was protecting him by smoothing it over. I wasn't. I was just showing him that it was okay for people to treat him like that. That being family meant they could disrespect him and he had to take it. That night, after I put Liam to bed, I sat at my computer and stared at the reservation for the trip Michelle had been planning for months. It was my card on file. She didn't have the credit to cover it, so she begged me to do it and promised to pay me back. He never did. I reminded her once. She ignored it. I didn't push. A week at a family beach resort. All-inclusive. Pools, activities, a kids' club, ocean views. Her dream vacation, she called it. I handled the entire booking. He just sent me a list of what she wanted. She didn't even say thank you. I stared at the screen, moved the mouse to cancel, and clicked it. It was non-refundable. I didn't care. The next few days were silent. I didn't hear from her. Then, the morning they were supposed to leave, she texted me like everything was fine. "What time do we check in? Kids are hyped." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I wrote back. "You don't." No explanation. No apology. Just that. She didn't reply right away. But the explosion came a few hours later. Calls. Texts. Voicemails. She called me selfish. Heartless. She said I ruined everything. That her kids were crying. That I was punishing them for something she didn't even mean. Then she called our parents. And that's when things really turned. They believed her. Michelle moved fast. The same day I canceled the trip, she called my parents crying. She told them I'd ruined the vacation her kids had been looking forward to for months. That I'd done it out of spite because I was jealous. She said I'd changed ever since I started making more money. That I thought I was better than everyone else now. That I was punishing her kids for something minor, some joke she barely even remembered. And they bought it. I didn't even get a call. Just silence. Then a week later I found out through a cousin that there had been a big barbecue at my parents' place. Everyone was invited, except me and Liam. My mom didn't say anything about it. No explanation. Just kept sending me forwarded inspirational quotes like everything was fine. One of them said, "Pride destroys families." I didn't respond. Michelle had always been the favorite. She was the one who stayed close to home, the one who married young, had kids quickly, went to church every Sunday. I was the one who moved away, started a business, raised my son alone. No one ever said it out loud, but I always felt like a guest in my own family. Useful when they needed help. Forgotten when they didn't. I thought the silence would pass. That once they heard my side it would blow over. It didn't. I called my dad a few days later to check in. He answered, but he sounded cold. Like he was annoyed. I asked if we could talk. He told me I needed to apologize to Michelle. That family isn't about teaching lessons. That I was being dramatic. I asked him if he knew what she said to Liam. He said, "She's under stress. You can't take everything so personally." That's when I realized they weren't going to listen. They didn't want to hear it. Because if they did, they'd have to admit they'd ignored it for years. All the times Michelle insulted Liam. All the times I'd stood there smiling through it. So I stopped trying. I stopped texting. Stopped calling. I focused on my son. I took Liam on a small weekend trip, just the two of us. We drove out to the lake, stayed in a cheap little cabin, made s'mores on the porch. He said it was the best weekend of his life. Meanwhile, Michelle kept going. I found out she was telling people I'd lost my mind. That I was cutting off family over nothing. That Liam was weird, and I was too sensitive. And then 3 months later she got into the accident. It was late September when I got the call. Not from Michelle. Not even from my parents. It was my Uncle Greg, the only one in the family who still spoke to me regularly. He told me Michelle had been in a car accident. A bad one. She was driving back from a soccer game with her kids. It had rained, the roads were slick, and she lost control near an intersection. The kids were shaken but okay. Michelle wasn't. I asked where she was. He told me the hospital. Said she'd undergone surgery and might never walk again. Her spine was damaged. The next few months would determine everything. I remember just sitting on the floor after that. No one had even thought to tell me. Not my parents. Not Michelle. Even after everything, I wasn't going to celebrate it. I didn't want revenge like that. But I also didn't feel the rush of panic the rest of them probably did. I felt still. Quiet. And then something else crept in. A sense of absolute clarity. 2 days later I got a message from my mom. "She's stable. Kids are okay. I'll update you when we know more." No greeting. No emotion. No question about me or Liam. Just pure logistics. A week passed. Then another. My mom texted again. "Michelle will need rehab. Insurance is maxing out. The facility she needs is too expensive." I didn't answer. That night I sat down and looked at my bank account. Looked at my car parked in the driveway. It was a newer model. I'd saved for years to get it. The first thing I'd bought that felt like it was truly mine. I listed it for sale the next morning. I didn't tell anyone. The day I got the payment, I called the rehab facility Michelle needed and paid the full balance. Quietly. No announcement. I didn't sign my name on anything. I just made sure they had her name, her case number, and that the payments would be taken care of in full for 6 months. I didn't do it for Michelle. I did it for the kids. For Liam. For myself. I didn't want to be anything like her. The kind of person who teaches children that kindness is something you only give to people who deserve it. A week after she was moved into rehab, I got the first message from her since the day I canceled the trip. "Why would you do this?" I didn't answer. She messaged again. "I don't understand. I treated you like garbage. I treated your son worse. Why would you do this?" So I didn't reply. A few days later she called. This time I picked up. When I answered the phone, she didn't speak at first. I could hear the faint hum of a machine in the background. The clatter of distant wheels. Hospital sounds. And then finally her voice. She said she didn't expect me to pick up. I said I wasn't sure why I did. There was a long pause after that. And then she started crying. Not the dramatic kind I was used to, the type she used when she wanted people on her side. This was quiet. Hickey. Like she was trying not to be heard. She said she couldn't feel her legs. That the doctors told her there was a chance, a small one, that she'd walk again if she stuck to the rehab schedule. But it was going to take time. And money. Neither of which she had anymore. She said our parents had already spent thousands on her hospital stay, and their savings were gone. Her husband was taking time off work to care for the kids, and the bills were piling up fast. Everyone around her was breaking under the weight of it. Then she said the part that hit me the hardest. She said she thought I would hate her too much to help. That she thought I'd finally written her off the way she probably deserved. That she wouldn't have blamed me. I didn't say anything. I just let her talk. He brought up Liam. She said she remembered how he looked that night at the dinner table. How quiet he was. She said her kids still laughed about it later, and at the time she thought it was funny. She thought it was harmless. But after the accident in that hospital bed, she started playing that night over in her mind. Over and over. She told me she'd never felt small before. Not until she needed help and realized how easy it was for everyone to turn away. And how the only person who didn't was the one she'd treated the worst. That was when she asked if she could speak to Liam. Not now but someday, when he was ready. She said she owed him more than an apology. She owed him the truth. And a lifetime of making up for what she took from him. I told her that he was doing fine. That he was happy. That he didn't ask about her anymore. And that I wasn't going to let anyone take that piece from him again. She said she understood. We ended the call quietly. There was no grand apology. No begging. No fake promises. Just silence on both ends. But something in her voice felt real for the first time in years. I didn't tell anyone I spoke to her. Not even Liam. But that night I sat on my porch and felt something I hadn't felt since all this started. Relief. Over the next few weeks, Michelle stayed in rehab. I got updates through the facility now and then, mostly from the admin office confirming her progress and the next payments. She was showing signs of improvement. Still no movement in her legs, but strength was coming back. There was hope. She didn't reach out again right away. I think she knew not to push it. But my parents did. My mom texted me a few days later, asking if I'd spoken to Michelle. I told her yes. She waited an hour before responding, then said she was glad we were finally acting like family again. That line stuck with me. Acting like family. The same family that sat through dinner while Michelle humiliated my kid. The same family that iced me out when I defended him. The same family that only reached back when they found out I'd paid the bills they couldn't. I realized they didn't see what I did as a gesture of kindness. They saw it as fixing a mess I had caused. It made me sick. But I kept my mouth shut. Then one morning, a few weeks into Michelle's rehab, I opened the door to find a box on my porch. No return label. No note. Inside was a small photo album. Cheap plastic cover. Inside were photos. Old ones. Michelle and I as kids. Her holding Liam as a baby. Our parents at birthdays. Pages of moments I hadn't seen in years. Tucked in the back was a folded piece of paper. Not typed. Handwritten. It wasn't dramatic. No, I'm a terrible person speech. Just a quiet letter. She wrote that she didn't expect things to go back to normal. That she wasn't asking me to forget anything. She said she wasn't even sure I'd want to see her again. But she hoped, if nothing else, I'd remember the version of her from the photos. The one before all the bitterness and competition. The one who used to braid my hair before school. I didn't cry when I read it. I just sat there for a long time trying to figure out how much damage people could do to each other before the good memories stopped meaning anything. Later that night, Liam found the album on the table. He flipped through it and asked who the lady was holding him in the second photo. I told him that was my sister. He looked at me and said, "Do we still talk to her?" I said, "Not a lot. But maybe one day." He nodded, then went back to his drawings. He didn't ask again. It was 4 months after the accident when I got the second call from Michelle. This time she sounded stronger. Physically at least. She said she'd finished her first round of rehab and had started walking short distances with assistance. She told me about the parallel bars, the daily routines, the setbacks, the tiny victories no one really understood unless they'd been through it. Then she said something I didn't expect. She said she'd like to come see us. Not to fix things, not to pretend the past didn't happen, but to sit in our living room and show Liam that the aunt who hurt him didn't disappear when it got hard. That she was still here trying to do better. I didn't say yes right away. I told her I'd think about it. I asked Liam a few days later casually if he'd want to see Aunt Michelle again sometime. He shrugged and said maybe. I left it there. A few weeks later she came by. No big moment. Just a quiet afternoon. She came in with a walker, no makeup, hair pulled back, dressed like someone who no longer cared what people thought about her. Liam was on the floor drawing. She didn't approach him right away. She just sat on the edge of the couch and asked what he was working on. He told her it was a robot that could clean his room with lasers. She said that was genius. He looked at her, not smiling, not cold either. Just studying her like he wasn't sure what to make of her yet. That was enough. They talked for maybe 5 minutes before he got up and walked out of the room. Michelle looked at me and said she was okay with that. She didn't expect more. She didn't stay long. But that visit was the start of something different. Not perfect. Not a full repair. But something honest. Michelle started coming by once a week. No more jokes. No snide remarks. No pretending things had never happened. He apologized to Liam. Not just once but every time it felt right. Not because she was trying to earn forgiveness quickly, but because she finally understood she didn't deserve it yet. And slowly something changed. Liam began to talk to her more, show her things. One day he handed her a drawing without being asked. That was the first time I saw tears in her eyes that didn't feel manipulative. She folded it carefully and told him she'd keep it safe. As for our parents, they stayed distant for a while. I didn't reach out. They eventually found out that I paid for Michelle's rehab, but they never thanked me. I stopped expecting them to. This wasn't about them anymore. It was about my son. And it was about me. About breaking a cycle I didn't realize I'd been a part of until I saw what it did to him. I spent years being quiet for the sake of peace, for the illusion of family. But the day Michelle humiliated my son at that table, she tore that illusion wide open. And weirdly enough, I'm grateful she did. Because that moment, as cruel as it was, gave me the fire to protect him properly. To finally say, enough. And to finally understand that love, even the kind that forgives, doesn't have to come without boundaries. Michelle walks now. She still limps. Still has pain. But she's moving. She volunteers at Liam's school library once a month. They're not close, not yet. But they laugh sometimes. And he no longer asks me why she doesn't come around. Because now she does. And every time she does, she brings back a piece of the sister I thought I lost. Maybe not the one from the old photos. But maybe someone even better. The one who learned the hard way that cruelty doesn't go unnoticed. And that forgiveness, real forgiveness, comes after you've crawled through the kind of fire you built yourself. And somehow made it out.